Jake Thompson wiped the sweat from his brow as he surveyed the chaos that was Star Shelter Animal Rescue. Located on the outskirts of a small Colorado mountain town, the facility was a patchwork of converted barns, donated trailers, and makeshift enclosures that housed the area's most unwanted animals. His staff consisted of 3 part-time volunteers. Maria Santos, a veterinary student with a gift for exotic animals. Old Pete, a retired rancher who could calm any creature. And Sarah Chun, a local teacher who handled the business side between classes. The morning had already brought 2 abandoned litters of kittens and a 3-legged goat named Fernando when the government truck arrived. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, their expressions hidden behind sunglasses despite the overcast sky. They wheeled a large, heavily secured containment unit toward the shelter's main building. "Mr. Thompson?" The taller agent consulted his clipboard. "We have a classified animal transfer. This creature has been deemed too dangerous for standard facilities. Your shelter has been selected due to your unique success rate with difficult cases." Jake raised an eyebrow. In his 15 years running Star Shelter, he'd taken in everything, from aggressive rescue dogs to a circus bear named Buster, who now lived peacefully in their back meadow. But the way these men handled the container suggested something entirely different. "What kind of animal are we talking about?" Jake asked, signing the thick stack of paperwork they thrust at him. "Classified. The containment protocols are detailed in the manual. Under no circumstances should you attempt direct contact without full protective gear. The creature is to be kept in isolation until disposal arrangements can be made." After the agents left, Jake stood alone with the mysterious container in his quarantine barn. Maria arrived an hour later, finding him still staring at the unit. "Government drop-off?" she asked, setting down her veterinary bag. "What's the story?" "That's just it. There is no story. They want us to keep it isolated until they can dispose of it." Jake's voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen too many animals written off as lost causes. Maria checked the containment unit's readings. "Temperature stable, but look at these energy readings. I've never seen anything like this." "Whatevers. In there, it's not just scared. It's single quotes S. different." That evening, Jake couldn't sleep. He'd built Star Shelter on the principle that every creature deserved a chance, regardless of their past or reputation. The idea of simply warehousing an animal until its execution went against everything he believed in. At 3 a.m., he made his decision. The quarantine barn was silent, except for the hum of the containment unit's systems. Jake slowly opened the viewing port, unsure what he'd find. Inside, curled in the corner, was something that defied explanation. Small, dragon-like creature no bigger than a house cat, with scales that seemed to shift between deep purple and starlight silver. Its breathing was labored, and even in the dim light, Jake could see it was malnourished and sick. "Hey there, little guy," Jake whispered, and the creature's eyes opened ancient, intelligent, and filled with a loneliness that broke his heart. Jake spent the next 3 days researching everything he could find about the creature, but came up empty. Government databases were restricted, and no known species matched what he was seeing. The little dragon, for lack of a better term, remained weak and refused the various foods Jake offered. Maria ran every test she could think of, but the creature's physiology was unlike anything in her veterinary textbooks. "His cellular structure is completely alien," Maria explained, showing Jake the microscopic images. "But look at this, his distress responses are identical to those of a neglected puppy. Whatever he is, he's been traumatized." Old Pete proved to be the breakthrough. The weathered rancher had an uncanny ability to connect with wounded animals. And when he sat quietly beside the containment unit, humming old cowboy ballads, the creature began to respond. Its labored breathing eased, and for the first time, it showed interest in food specifically, the energy bars Pete always carried. "He's not eating the bars," Pete observed. "He's absorbing something from them. Energy, maybe? I've seen stranger things in my 70 years. Jake decided to name the creature Cosmo, both for his otherworldly appearance and the way he seemed to brighten whenever stars were visible through the barn skylight. Against all protocols, Jake began spending his evenings in the quarantine barn, talking to Cosmo about his day, his struggles with the shelter, and his dreams of creating a place where no animal was considered hopeless. Sarah Chun was the first to notice the changes. "Jake, have you looked at our utility bills lately? Our power consumption has dropped by 30% this month, and the backup generator you said was dying? It's running better than ever." Jake hadn't noticed, but she was right. The shelter's perpetually failing systems seemed to be running smoothly. The temperamental water heater that usually required daily coaxing now maintained perfect temperatures. The security system that had been on the fritz for months was suddenly working flawlessly. The real breakthrough came when Jake injured his hand while repairing a fence. As he sat in the quarantine barn, wrapping the wound, Cosmo pressed against the containment unit's wall, making soft chirping sounds. Jake placed his bandaged hand against the transparent barrier, and something extraordinary happened. The pain simply vanished. "Cosmo," Jake whispered, staring at his completely healed hand, "what are you?" The creature's response was a sound Jake had never heard before, a gentle purring that seemed to resonate through the walls themselves. In that moment, Jake understood that Cosmo wasn't just different. He was special in ways that could change everything. But their peaceful routine was about to be shattered. Maria burst into the barn just as Jake was removing Cosmo from the containment unit for the first time. "Jake, we have a problem. Those government agents are back, and they're not alone. There's a whole convoy heading up the mountain road." The convoy consisted of 6 black SUVs, a mobile command unit, and what appeared to be a containment truck designed for transporting hazardous materials. Jake barely had time to return Cosmo to his unit before the vehicles surrounded Star Shelter. The lead agent from the previous week stepped out, accompanied by a woman in a military uniform and a man in a white lab coat. "Mr. Thompson," the agent said, his voice carrying new authority, "I'm Agent Rodriguez, and this is Colonel Martinez and Dr. Vance from the Department of Extraordinary Phenomena. We're here to collect the asset and conduct a full security review of your facility." Jake's blood ran cold. "Asset? You mean Cosmo?" Dr. Vance stepped forward, tablet in hand. "The creature you've been harboring is classified as an alpha-level threat. Our monitoring systems had detected significant energy fluctuations originating from this location. You've compromised containment protocols by removing the subject from its secure unit." "I've been caring for a sick animal," Jake replied firmly. "If you'd bothered to check, you'd see he's been responding to treatment." Colonel Martinez laughed harshly. "Treatment? Mr. Thompson, that creature is one of the last surviving members of a species that nearly destroyed an entire planet. They're called void dragons, and they're capable of manipulating reality itself. The only reason Earth survived their previous incursion was because we managed to locate and eliminate their breeding population." Maria stepped forward, her veterinary training overriding her fear. "That's impossible. Cosmo is gentle, intelligent, and he's been helping maintain the shelter systems. He's not destructive, he's protective. The creature has been manipulating your perceptions," Dr. Vance explained coldly. "Void dragons are master manipulators. They make their victims believe they're harmless pets while slowly draining the dimensional barriers that keep reality stable." But as they spoke, something unprecedented was happening. The other animals at Star Shelter, dogs, cats, horses, and even Fernando, the 3-legged goat, began moving toward the quarantine barn. They arranged themselves in a protective circle, their behavior coordinated in a way that defied explanation. Old Pete noticed it first. In all my years, I've never seen animals act like this. They're not scared, they're defending him. The military team prepared to enter the barn, but their equipment began malfunctioning. Radios crackled with static, vehicle engines stuttered, and the containment truck systems showed impossible readings. Dr. Vance stared at his tablet in bewilderment. "The electromagnetic interference is off the charts," he reported. "But it's not random, it's targeted. The creature is actively disrupting our technology." Jake realized the truth in that moment. Cosmo wasn't just healing and helping. He was learning. He'd been observing human behavior, understanding their motivations, and using his abilities not to destroy, but to protect the place that had shown him kindness. "You're wrong about him," Jake said, walking toward the barn despite the soldiers' protests. "He's not a monster. He's a child who's been traumatized by people who see him as nothing but a weapon." As Jake entered the barn, Cosmo was pressed against his containment unit, chirping frantically. The little dragon's scales were shifting rapidly between colors, and his eyes held a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "It's okay, buddy," Jake whispered, placing his hand on the unit. "I'm not going to let them hurt you." The moment Jake's hand touched the containment unit, everything changed. The barn filled with a soft, harmonious sound, Cosmo's purring, but amplified and somehow more complex. The sound resonated through the building, the ground, and into the very air itself. Outside, a government team watched in amazement as their equipment stopped malfunctioning and began working better than ever. The damaged areas of the shelter began repairing themselves, and the sick animals in the recovery ward showed immediate signs of improvement. Dr. Vance stared at his readings in disbelief. "This is impossible. The creature isn't draining energy, it's creating it. It's not destabilizing reality, it's harmonizing it." The government team was forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about void dragons. Dr. Vance, despite his initial skepticism, found himself fascinated by the readings his equipment was producing. Instead of the destructive energy patterns they'd expected, Cosmo was generating what could only be described as healing frequencies. "This changes everything," Dr. Vance admitted, reviewing the data with Maria. Every previous encounter with void dragons showed them as reality destructive parasites. But this one, it's as if it's been domesticated. Colonel Martinez remains skeptical. "Or it's evolved its manipulation techniques. We can't risk." Her words were cut short by a commotion outside. Sarah Chun came running from the main building, her face flushed with excitement and confusion. "Jake, you need to see this. The phone hasn't stopped ringing for the past hour. News crews, scientists, government officials from 3 different countries. Somehow word got out about Cosmo." Indeed, the secret was spreading with impossible speed. Video footage shot by a delivery driver showed the government convoy and the strange behavior of the shelter animals. Social media exploded with speculation about everything from alien contact to secret government experiments. But more significantly, other reports were coming in. A marine biologist from Seattle claimed her research station had been visited by a creature matching Cosmo's description, which had somehow restored a damaged coral reef overnight. A wildlife photographer in Alaska reported a similar encounter that had resulted in the miraculous recovery of a dying whale pod. There are more of them, Maria realized, looking at the reports. Cosmo isn't the last of his kind. He's part of a network. Dr. Vance's tablet chimed with an incoming priority message. His face went pale as he read it. "Colonel, we have a situation. The European Space Agency is reporting massive energy signatures detected in orbit. Something big is coming." Jake felt Cosmo's distress through their growing bond. The little dragon was pressed against the containment unit, his scales shifting rapidly between colors, making urgent chirping sounds. "He's trying to warn us," Jake said, opening the containment unit despite the protests of the military team. For the first time, he lifted Cosmo into his arms, feeling the creature's small body trembling with anxiety. The moment Jake held Cosmo, everyone present was suddenly aware of something vast and ancient approaching Earth, not through their eyes or ears, but through some deeper sense that the little dragon was sharing with them. "They're coming home," Jake whispered, understanding flooding through him. Cosmo wasn't abandoned. He was sent ahead. He's been preparing Earth for something. The revelation hit everyone simultaneously. The void dragons weren't invaders or parasites. They were refugees. Something had driven them from their original dimension, and they'd been searching for a place where they could exist without causing harm. Cosmo had been testing whether humans could accept them, whether coexistence was possible. Old Pete, who had been quiet through the entire confrontation, finally spoke up. "You know, in all my years working with animals, I've learned one thing. The most dangerous creatures are usually the most scared. This little fella isn't a weapon. He's a child who's been trying to prove his people aren't monsters." Colonel Martinez was receiving reports through her earpiece. "Sir, we're getting readings from observatories worldwide. Multiple large objects have entered the solar system, but they're not approaching Earth. They single quotes waiting." Jake looked down at Cosmo, who was now purring softly in his arms. The sound was no longer just comforting, it was communicative. Through their bond, Jake could sense the fear and hope of an entire species, waiting to learn whether they would be welcomed or destroyed. "They're not coming to invade," Jake said, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "They're coming to ask permission." The weight of the moment settled on everyone present. Humanity was about to make first contact with an alien species, and the success or failure of that contact might well depend on a small-town animal shelter operator and his relationship with a dragon, the size of a house. Dr. Vance lowered his tablet, his scientific skepticism finally giving way to wonder. "Mr. Thompson, I think you may be about to become the most important person on Earth." The next 48 hours transformed Star Shelter from a struggling animal rescue into the center of the most significant event in human history. Scientists, diplomats, and military officials from around the world descended on the small Colorado facility. But Jake insisted that all meetings take place in the familiar environment of the shelter, with Cosmo free to move about as he pleased. The little dragon had grown noticeably in just a few days, now the size of a medium dog, but his gentle nature remained unchanged. He seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, often positioning himself between Jake and the more aggressive officials, his scales shifting to calming blues and greens. Dr. Vance, now leading the scientific team, had become one of Cosmo's strongest advocates. "The healing properties alone could revolutionize medicine," he explained to the assembled officials. "But more importantly, the void dragons appear to be natural reality stabilizers. They don't consume dimensions, they repair them." The breakthrough came when Maria made a simple observation. "Look at how he interacts with the other animals," she said, pointing to where Cosmo was playing with a group of rescue dogs. "He's not dominant or predatory. He's social. He's treating them like pack members." Jake realized she was right. Cosmo had integrated himself into the shelter's ecosystem, not as a ruler or predator, but as a protector and healer. When injured, animals were brought in. Cosmo would position himself nearby, his purring providing comfort and accelerating healing. When equipment failed, he would focus his attention on it until it functioned better than ever. The moment of truth came when the waiting ships began to move. Instead of approaching Earth directly, they took positions around the solar system's harder planets, sending a single, much smaller vessel toward Earth. The message was clear. They were coming in peace, with minimal force, requesting permission to land. "Where?" asked Colonel Martinez, now serving as the military liaison rather than a threat assessor. Jake looked down at Cosmo. who was gazing up at him with those ancient, intelligent eyes. "Here," Jake said simply. "They want to land here at Star Shelter." The objections were immediate and loud. Government officials argued about protocols, security, and the precedent of first contact taking place at a private facility. But Jake was adamant, and Cosmo's distress whenever alternative locations were discussed made it clear that this was non-negotiable. "They trust this place," Jake explained. "Cosmo has been sending them information about us, about how we treat the creatures in our care. They're not going to risk their people anywhere else." The landing took place at dawn, 3 days after the government convoy had first arrived. The Void Dragon ship was unlike anything in human science fiction organic looking, with curves that seemed to breathe, and a surface that shifted between transparency and opacity like living tissue. 3 adult Void Dragons emerged, each the size of a large horse, their scales shimmering with patterns that defied description. They moved with grace and caution, their heads turning to take in the assembled crowd of humans, animals, and media representatives, but they ignored everyone else, walking directly to where Jake stood with Cosmo in his arms. The reunion was unlike anything the observers had expected. Instead of the formal protocols of diplomatic contact, what they witnessed was a family reunion. The adult dragons surrounded Jake and Cosmo, their harmonious purring creating a sound that resonated through every person present. Through Cosmo, Jake found himself understanding their communication. The adult dragons were Cosmo's parents, and they were expressing gratitude that transcended language. Their species had been nomadic for generations, driven from their home dimension by a catastrophic event, searching for a place where they could exist without causing harm. "They've been looking for a species that could accept them," Jake translated, his voice filled with wonder. Cosmo was their scout, their proof that coexistence was possible. The lead dragon, slightly larger than the others, approached Jake directly. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through sound, but through the same empathic connection Jake had developed with Cosmo. "You gave our child hope when we could only offer him fear," the dragon communicated. "You saw him as he truly was, not as legend claimed he must be. In return, we offer our guardianship to your world." The negotiations that followed were unlike any in human history. The Void Dragons didn't want territory or resources. They wanted to be useful. They offered their reality-stabilizing abilities to help heal Earth's environmental damage, their healing resonance to advance medical science, and their dimensional knowledge to expand human understanding of the universe. In return, they asked only for acceptance and the right to establish small communities where they could raise their young in peace. The first such community would be built around Star Shelter, which would become the embassy between species. 1 year later, Jake stood in the expanded Star Shelter facility, now officially known as the Interspecies Sanctuary and Diplomatic Center. The original buildings were still there, but they'd been joined by beautiful organic structures that seemed to grow from the landscape itself. Void Dragon architecture that existed in harmony with the natural world. Cosmo, now the size of a small elephant, but still gentle as a kitten, was playing with a group of young dragons and human children in the meadow where Fernando the goat once grazed alone. The old goat was still there, now serving as an unlikely ambassador between species, his 3-legged gait having inspired the dragons' philosophy that imperfection was just another form of beauty. Maria had become the head of the new department of interspecies medicine, working with dragon healers to develop treatments that seemed miraculous by old standards. Old Pete had been appointed as the facility's director of animal relations, his natural ability to calm any creature making him invaluable in the new world. Sarah Sean now managed the complex logistics of running humanity's first interspecies diplomatic facility, coordinating between governments, scientists, and the dragon families who had made Earth their home. But Jake remained what he'd always been, the person who saw potential in creatures others had written off as hopeless. He'd taken in the most feared baby dragon in the galaxy, and in doing so, had opened the door to a future where fear could be transformed into friendship, where the most dangerous creatures might just be the ones most in need of love. As the sun set over the Colorado mountains, Jake watched Cosmo teaching a group of young dragons how to play fetch with the rescue dogs. The sound of their harmonious purring filled the air, a song of contentment that resonated across dimensions, proof that sometimes the most extraordinary changes begin with the simplest act of kindness. The galaxy had indeed been shocked by what followed Jake's decision to help a scared, sick creature. But perhaps the biggest shock was learning that the most feared predators in the universe just needed someone to believe they could be something more than their reputation suggested. And, in the end, that's exactly what they became.